We're going to read from the St. Paul's letter to the Philippians. This is actually the 10th week, and I'm going to be reading from Philippians chapter 2, verses 3. I'm not even going to read the whole verse, and then I'm only going to talk about half of the verse, so about a quarter of the verse. But the topic that we're going to be speaking about is conceit or pride. And if anybody's ever read Mere Christianity and the C.S. Lewis chapter, The Great Sin, I've pretty much shamelessly stolen from that if you want to know where some of the content it comes from. But the verse is, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Now, before I get into the teaching, I have to make fun of myself. Maybe it will help me with humility. I realized this morning when I was looking at my notes, I don't write down my message, but I do an outline of notes, that everywhere where I wrote the word vain, V-A-I-N, which is a form of vanity, I wrote V-E-I-N, which is a blood vessel, because I am a vascular surgeon after all. So all through my notes has the word vein as in blood vessel. And I was trying to correct that when I realized it this morning, not that anybody could see it but me, but this is in my vascular humor book that I'm going to be writing that about 10 people in America will buy. So do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. This is the first of a two-part message. I want to speak about conceit and then next week humility. But they're such big topics that I just can't cover them all today. When I did sorrow and then I did encouragement, sorrow was the bigger of the two talks. When I'm doing pride and then humility, humility will be the bigger of the two talks. So it's a shameless plug to come back next week or check us out online if you can't make it. As far as selfish ambition goes, that would be a whole nother week of a topic, and I'm sure at some point we'll get to it. Let me just say that the word in the Greek means mercenary, and the idea of what a mercenary does is that they do things for their own gain, regardless of the strife that it causes. And that's what selfishness is about, is that it's all about that person. We've talked about that Paul was writing his letter to the Philippians, which was a military city. Just like UMass Lowell has made Lowell a college town, the Philippians were in the middle of a lot of retired military. So it's the fourth or fifth military term that Paul uses in the letter. And it's this idea of don't be a mercenary. Don't just do things for yourself at the expense of other people. But I'm just going to leave it at that and say some other day maybe God will lead us to really unpack selfishness. But I want to focus more today on this idea of pride. Now I have to get one other thing out of the way before I teach and preach. And it's the problem, just like with the vain problem, that the same sounding word can have two different spellings. The same word can have two different or three different meanings. And those meanings can almost sometimes be opposite each other. So when I'm speaking about conceit or pride, I'm going to use these terms interchangeably. But I want to first be clear what I don't mean when I say pride. And what I don't mean is to say, I'm proud of my son because he did this or that. Or I'm proud of my country or my race or my ethnicity or my baseball team. If by that you mean I have a warm-hearted affection, this is who I am, this is who God made me, or this is just this warm, loving feeling, and we use the term pride or proud, this is not a vice, this is not an evil or a wicked thing, this is a good thing. And so I just want to, if there's in anybody's mind that I'm speaking about that, or even that you're proud about doing something, if by that you mean you have pleasure that you helped or met somebody's need. That is also not what I'm talking about. And so these two things of even pleasure in being praised, everybody likes to hear, hey, good job. That was a good job. That is not what we're going to see is what pride is about. Pride is not, a sinful thing if by that you mean that you met a need and somebody acknowledged you and you were satisfied by that. We will talk about what it is, but that isn't what it is. This word is used only once in the Bible, and yet it's this great sin. The specific word in the Greek literally means the word pride, or this vain conceit is just one Greek word, and it means empty pride. It's a compound word. The Greeks were famous for it. Or conceit based on nothing. I like that one. Excessive pride. And the idea is that it's a cheap pride. It's a pride that has no basis in fact. Now, I'm going to break up the talk into vanity and then conceit. Vanity is the lesser of the two sins because a vain person at least cares what other people think about them. The deeper you go in the road to conceit, the less you care about what other people think of you because their opinion is worthless to how great you are, you see? So vanity, at least there's some dependence on other people. Now, vanity is something I was trying to describe just in my 50 years and then, let's say, over the last 200 years. If somebody, what is vanity? Let me define it. Vanity is this idea of excessive pride in one's appearance or achievements. Now, let's talk about appearance for a second. To be proud and to be vain is something that in, let's say, the 1800s, before there was photography, might be something that you would be concerned with when you're around 2 or 3 people, at most 20 or 50 people. You couldn't really be concerned if you were on a stage or something because people can't see you well, and very few people had that kind of access. But we, over the 1800s, had flash photography, and then we had videos, and ultimately TV and the internet and social media. All has developed over the last 100 years. And with that is the multiplication of the potential for vanity to really grip a person, where before they might be concerned about how they appear before a few people, now the person could be concerned about how they appear before virtually millions of people. And so this changes the magnitude of this. So I am going to do something I don't often do, although I did it 2 weeks ago, is I'm going to read an excerpt from an essay. But this is so good. This nails vanity so well in the light of social media. It's by a person by the name of Clara Dollar, and I read it in the newspaper. So I've abbreviated it, and let me just say that she's a college student from New York, and she wrote this and had this published to describe her own dealing with her social media persona, and specifically with regard to this person that was in her class in school that she liked, but wasn't able to have a normal or initiate a normal relationship with that person because the relationship was all done through social media, even though the boy was right in the young man was right in the same class as her. So she was trying to have this in a virtual manner. So this begins with a comment that he says in their social media. "You're like a cartoon character," he said, "always wearing the same thing every day." He meant it as an intimate observation, the kind you can only make after spending a lot of time getting to know each other. You flip your hair to the right. You only eat ice cream out of mugs. You always wear a black leather jacket. I know you. And he did know me. Rather, he knew the character of me that I had created and meticulously cultivated, and the me that I broadcast to the world on Instagram and Facebook. The witty, creative me, always detached, never cheesy, never needy. That version of me got her start online as my social media persona. But over time, and I suppose for the sake of consistency, she bled off the screen and overtook my real-life personality. And once you master what is essentially an on-stage performance, it can be hard to break character. There was a time when I allowed myself to be more than what I could fit onto a 2x4 screen, when I wasn't so self-conscious about how I was seen, when I embraced my contradictions and desires and had less fear of embarrassment or rejection. She then goes on to talk about how she met this guy who then began to follow her, that was actually in her classroom, and fell for the fake her, but ultimately grew bored of her because it was not real. And this is what happened to her when that happened. Like an allergic reaction to becoming unloved, my Instagram account went into overdrive, all aimed at one audience member, Joe. Through hundreds of screens, I was screaming at him. That's brilliant. Through hundreds of screens, I was screaming at him. I'm here, I'm funny, I'm at that fish taco place that I showed you. The likes I got from my followers did little to quell my crushing need for Joe's cyber approval. Like me again and again, like me, became my subconscious mantra. But he didn't like me, and each time he didn't, my heartache felt like a warm bullet exploding in my gut. And so on I went, and I kept it at this beautiful box that I was crafting for myself. A shoebox covered in stickers and fake jewels, the kind you would make for a pet parakeet you have to bury. I would dream about Joe at night and in the morning post something silvery and eye-catching. It was always just tinfoil, not truth, and I prayed no one would notice. A girl who follows me, with whom I've spoken only a handful of times, told me on one of my witty posts, it was so brand. If you spend 8 years building a house, no matter how uncomfortable or ugly it may be, no matter how impractical or poorly lit, it becomes nearly impossible to knock it down. This is about how long I put into building my social media presence, into being the cool girl I showcased on Instagram and Facebook. I built her without blueprints, not knowing that she would become a wall without doors. She had stopped me from dating because it meant I would care about romance. She had stopped me from wearing pink because it would mean I'm too feminine. She had stopped me from being publicly heartbroken, from sobbing at the orange subway seats, from showing up on Joe's doorstep with the letters I wrote, because that would mean that I'm not cool. Most recently, she tried to stop me from writing this essay, from admitting to everyone that I am hurting. I wrote it anyway, though. And that's a start. And I don't know this woman, but that is certainly a start for her to write that and to say that. And it's so candid. And that's the thing about vanity, is it's just the opposite. It's so fake. It's like looking closely at a dollar bill and just seeing how counterfeit it is, just in so many ways. And when you're creating this dreamy persona, the problem is people fall asleep. It's not real. And so I don't want to think that the heart of the message is about vanity, because it's really a much lesser sin than real black conceit. And that's really what I want to shift gears and talk about that for most of the rest of the time. Now, other words or synonyms for conceited is to be arrogant, to be a snob, to have a big ego. If anybody saw Guardians of the Galaxy 2, the hero's father was named what? Ego. And he just wanted to merely eat the worlds of the entire universes. It's really to think that you're better than other people. It's about thinking that you're better than other people. C.S. Lewis specifically said that there is no vice, there is no evil, there is no wickedness that compares with conceit. If you take things that other people might think or talk about as being conceits, or Christians frequently talk about, such as addictions or the society, if you see an article in the paper about somebody who has a drug addiction and you read the comments below, it's, dirtbag and scum, and, there's all these things that everyone has sort of wrapped up as these great evils. When really what God is saying here and what God is saying through Paul is that this is the great evil. And the thing about this evil is that the more you have it, the less you see it in yourself, all the while the more you hate it in other people. So let me say that again. The more you become conceited, the more it offends you when other people are conceited. And the less you realize that you yourself are conceited. It has this blinding effect on you. Now, these other sins that we're talking about, like drunkenness or addictions or whatever you want to say, those are sins of the flesh or sins of passion. But this is a spiritual sin. This is what made the devil the devil. I'd rather be a king in hell than serve in heaven. This is the core of the devil. This is the core of hell, is conceit, is pride. Now just test ourselves right now for a minute. How much do we dislike it when someone snubs us, when someone ignores us, when someone doesn't seem to respect our opinion as much as we feel they should? Are we sore losers? Which may show itself in emotion or may show itself in a game with excessive, let me look at the rule on that and double check that, in board games or in sporting events, excessive complaining about referees or umpires or whoever. Just showing off, which is more of a vanity thing. And even as I'm talking about this, aren't we so guilty that other people are so often coming to our mind? That is not going to help you or God, you get closer to God, if you have other people in your mind right now. The only person you need to have in your mind is you. Because just ask the person next to you, they could all affirm it. Oh yeah, this one's for you, honey. My wife isn't here today. That's why I preach this message. She's on a women's retreat. Some of the girls are missing. Pride is essentially competitive. Nobody takes pride in being rich, in being strong, in being good-looking, in being clever, and being athletic. What do I mean by that? You're only proud that you're richer, better-looking, stronger than the other person. That's what pride is. Pride is essentially competitive. It's the comparison that makes you conceited. It's essentially comparison. It's not that you have a nice car, but you have a nicer car. Not a fast car, but a faster car. Not an expensive car, but a more expensive car. And if somebody drives by you that has a more faster car, and a more expensive car, and a more whatever, then boom, hate that person. Can't stand that person. Look at them showing off. What do they think they are? Who do they think they are? It's not how many surgeries you do, but that you do more surgeries than somebody else. It's not how many sales you do, but how many more sales you do than somebody else. Not how much music you do, but how much more music you sell or promote or views or likes. That's what it is. It's essentially competitive. I mean, people are conceited about everything. I was writing down your music, your strength, your cars, your house. It could be your baskets in your house for all I know. Your clothes, your height, your weight, your anything that you think is better than somebody else. That's where conceited lies, at your heart of who you are. You see, accidentally, two guys might like the same girl, right? That just kind of happens sometimes. But the proud person, the conceited person, wants to steal your girl from you, to show you that he is that alpha person over you, that this is who he is over you. This is what we're talking about here. This is the black form of it. You know, two greedy men might be fighting over the saved dollar, but that proud person wants to have more money than anyone else, more than he could possibly need, because even greed runs out. At some point, there's just too much of it. But it's pride. That's where the power comes in, that they want more than everyone else. As long as there's one person that's better looking, stronger, faster, whatever it is, you hate that person, and that person is your enemy and your rival. It's not, unfortunately, just bad blood with other people. It's not just hostility and resentment towards that other person. It's bad blood between God and you. Because when we meet God, we meet someone who is immeasurably greater than us in every way. Period. He is immeasurably greater. Now, we got to come back next week to talk about humility. But there's a certain a person that's on PBS that said that God has a huge ego problem. He wants everyone to worship him. And we've heard of people talk about God complexes. Okay, and I'm a physician, and people that they say this person has a God complex. They think they're great. They think they're God. They think they can do anything. That is, wow, the devil whipped up a real doozy there. That is a devil complex. That is from the pit of hell, to think you're better than other people, to think that you can control other people. This is, when we'll see humility, we're going to see what the character of God is like. But I'll just say for this as a sneak peek, that God wants us to be humble, that we could be close to him, who is that way. But as long as we have these big egos, as long as we're looking down on other people, we just can't look up at him. You can't do both. If you're looking down on people and you think you're better than other people, you can't look up to him. Now, I know what you're thinking. I know a lot of Christian people, or I know a lot of people who are eaten up by pride and say they believe in him. They are worshiping an imaginary God. And if we do that, we are doing that. Not those people out there that we never met before, but that is what's going on. That is not the real God, because it's not possible. I call this the pinch me test. If following him, if being a Christian makes you feel that you are good, I'll top that, makes you feel you are better than somebody else, then you are worshiping that imaginary God. That is the work of the devil right there. I mean, I don't say that every day up here, but that is the work of the devil right there. I'm better than all those other people. I'm better. What does Jesus say with that? The Pharisee and the tax collector. I thank you, God, that I'm not like this one, this one, this one, this one. And then the back row of the church, the tax collector that says, have mercy me on, God, a sinner. But that's for next week too. See, I want to jump ahead, but I really want to lay out the problem here. You know, Acacia spoke about it in terms of the diagnosis when she and I met and we were praying. That this is the diagnosis of our hearts. That we are conceited. That we are selfish. That we are thinking about us as better than other people. Pride is spiritual cancer. All these other sins that we talked about are mosquito bites. This is the cancer. It eats up every possibility of joy, contentment, love, relationship with God, and relationship with other people. Think about your families. Think about the bad blood. Think about the grudges that are going on. Think about this that's happening. It always stems from pride. I'll tell you why. This is it. This is what God showed me, is with siblings, with people who are close to you, that really breeds that rivalry. You got the same blood in you. You're close to that person. You see, you don't have rivalry with an ant. You don't think about the ant as a competitor, but when you come into your own family, your own DNA, people who are very close to you, this is where it can really lead to trying to top itself. Plus, all the baloney is gone. All the phoniness and vanity, that's all gone. Nobody believes that in the family. You want to know what somebody's like, talk to their families. Okay, so all that persona is gone, and then this is where it can happen. And it stems from pride. It stems from enmity that results from that. And if it's happening in your family, then come back next week and let's talk about humility, because this was a huge problem in my family when I was growing up. Not my immediate family, my extended family. Okay, and I don't know why. But, I had a grandmother that was born in a country where this is a rampant problem, okay? And maybe it's every country in the world. But there was she just had it. If somebody she felt offended her, somebody she felt crossed her, somebody she felt didn't do how she was, that's it. You're out of the family. You're not my son. You're not. It just was like this all the time. I will say that in her late 80s, before she died, that she gave that up and really encountered God and let that go. But it's better to get it right in your 80s than never at all. I was trying to think how I end this, because this is sort of like the sorrow, where this is not something that's just got this happy thing, especially since I'm not going to talk about humility till next week. I would say, what are the consequences of pride besides enmity, besides broken relationships, besides emptiness? We say all sin is attempt to fill voids. Pride creates the void. Because what is it? Empty conceit. You blow yourself up and it's all just gas. And we say that person's full of hot air. When we speak and when we boast, and God knows I'm guilty of this, you are right there just showing what's in your heart. Like the balloon, that's got the thing taken off of it, the helium balloon, and the air just comes out. That's all it is right there. Anytime you begin a sentence with the letter I, watch out. Pride is right around the corner. Boasting is just a reflection of what's happening in your heart. That's a good, heads up for yourself. We've talked about this over the last few weeks, right? Think about what you're thinking about. Before you say something, is this that little voice in my head looking for approval? It's in I get it. We're very dignified here. It's very backhanded way. I don't know much, but I would say that maybe perhaps this. We're so full of our idea. We're so full of ourselves. We just want it to be understated because we don't want it to just be right out there. But deep inside, if that's what's going on, whether it's the vanity looking for approval or whether you're just venting all this stuff that's in you, this bad air, catch yourself. Be aware of it. Repent. What's the consequence of pride? Proverbs 16:18. Pride goeth before a fall. Now that's a contraction of that verse, but it's essentially that pride leads to a fall. Now, how could that be? Well, there's the obvious thing of that as you put yourself up higher and higher, you only set yourself up to topple down. But the idea is that there's pride obscures spiritual judgment. And so you're unable to see yourself and see your situation not only the way God sees it, but just see it the way that it really is. And it's an overconfidence that leads to a miscalculation. That's what happens in day-to-day living with pride. We've all seen overconfidence backfire. We talked about earlier when Paul was imprisoned by the people that wanted to contain the gospel, it backfired because he was allowed access to all of these leaders that were soldiers and the palace people who were the influential people in Rome. And the same thing is true of conceit, that as it grows and grows in our life, we accomplish less and less. Even for those who have achieved the very top of some particular role, whether it be in athletics or in life or in appearance, let it be known that nobody stays on top forever. That's it. Nobody stays on top forever. And so there's this ever fear of losing your spot even if you've hit it. I'll end with this. Sometime this week. By the way, how many people sent the letter last week that were here last week that I said, oh, send a letter to someone? Just me? Okay. This week, sometime, here's your homework, admit you're wrong to somebody. Don't worry, there'll be plenty of opportunities for you to do it. Just once, just the first step. Just actually say, I was wrong. You can add, you were right, but literally, I was wrong. To your children, to your spouse, to somebody. I was wrong. The final step is to realize you're proud. Realize this lesson is for us. It's for you. It's for me. If you think you are not conceited, you are very conceited indeed.